All right, hello there. This is Miss DeLong making you a quick video lesson to go over rhetorical analysis. Um, so for Essay 2, we did a little bit with analysis of commercials. Essay 3 is going to continue on with the genre of analysis, but we will specifically be taking a look at rhetorical analysis. So my hope is that this video will be a little quicker than some of the ones I've left you before when I was trying to fill a full day's worth of subplans. My hope is that this will be a quick lesson just to go over what rhetorical analysis is, what it looks like, and some possible things to keep in mind and some terms that might help you as we move into writing our own rhetorical analyses. Um, so let me share my screen. I have a little PowerPoint here. By the time you're watching this video, I will make sure that this is posted somewhere onto Google Classroom for you. But here's just a quick little video to introduce you to rhetorical analysis. So rhetorical analysis, of course, is kind of a combination of two things, right? You got the rhetoric piece and you have the analysis piece. So we've talked about both of these concepts separately before. Rhetoric, we talked about at the beginning of the year. Rhetoric is the use of language in a persuasive and effective manner. It's sometimes thought of as the application of knowledge and understanding and argumentation sometimes within the language in order to achieve a desired effect or purpose. So again, I know this was a long time ago at this point. If you remember some of the stuff we did way early on in the year, we talked about how the ancient Greeks and Romans kind of focused on three things with their education. The youngest kids focused on learning facts like memorization, what are the facts of all the different disciplines that are important to them. Then they learned about how do we construct arguments in a logical way. And then the third step, sometimes thought of as like the hardest step, is putting it all together and saying, how do we construct these arguments in a persuasive and rhetorically rich way where people will actually be compelled to listen to these arguments and might actually be persuaded by them. So rhetoric, again, is the use of language. What specific language choices is somebody making in order to make their point in whatever genre they're writing in or speaking in. Analysis, of course, I know this one's probably going to be a little fresher in your head since we just did a little bit with analysis, but analysis involves studying anything really by breaking it down into its parts in order to make a conclusion about the whole. So if we put these together, a rhetorical analysis is an exercise, often an essay, in which you break down the parts of a rhetorical message in order to determine what makes it work on the whole. So some things you might look at if you're doing a rhetorical analysis are how are rhetorical appeals used? The things like ethos, pathos, logos, and kairos. This is in a slightly perhaps illogical order, but we can recall that ethos is an appeal to somebody's authority or credibility. Again, give you quick examples of this. I know we just talked about this. Perhaps, a commercial that references 9 out of 10 doctors think our medication is the best for this. That's appealing to their authority or their credibility. Something else interesting to think about with ethos is there anything within the writing itself that helps to build credibility? So sometimes things like writing in a clear and organized way can help you as an author to build your ethos. Perhaps, not, editing your writing in such a way that it is error-free and clear and easy to read. All of those things as a writer will also help you to build your ethos and help your reader say, oh, this person probably knows what they're talking about a little bit. But ethos, again, is anything that helps to build authority or helps to build credibility. Pathos is appeals to emotions. I think most people, if they remember any of these, perhaps remember pathos. Anything that is designed to make an audience or a reader feel a certain way is pathos. Logos is appeals to logic. Often that looks like things such as facts, statistics, data, etc. And then Kairos, the one that sometimes gets missed depending on who's teaching this. Kairos is appeals to the moment, which includes things such as context and timing. Um, let's see. So a rhetorical analysis often takes a look at those different appeals, says how are they used? Are some of those appeals used more than others? What effect do these appeals create in the reader and or viewer? That's our first bullet. Next one is, are there any devices used? Now, the devices are kind of your more traditional English teacher words, if you will. Are there things like similes or metaphors used in the text? Is there hyperboles or exaggerations, repetitions, etc.? On a later slide, I have a word bank, if you will, of quite a few of these different devices. If anything like that is present in the text, those are usually interesting things to think about and see how are they used, why are they there, what effect are they creating. Some other bullets. What form does the text take? Are we looking at a tweet? Are we looking at a commercial? Are we looking at an op-ed article, maybe a longer piece of text? Certainly the form is interesting, and the form that the text takes can have a effect on the content and the messaging and the rhetoric as well. Let's see what type of language is used. Is it formal language? Is it more conversational language? On a similar note, how are the sentences constructed? Do we have lots of long, flowing, complex sentences? Or are they, again, a little shorter, perhaps a little more conversational in how they're constructed? And then ultimately, this last bullet is probably the most important one when you're thinking about rhetorical analysis. What effect do all of these choices have on the text as a whole? So rhetorical analyses, depending again on how they're taught, really should not just be picking out these different strategies and saying, ooh, I see an example of logos here. That's great. That's the first step. But what is that example or that instance of logos actually doing in the text? How does it work? Why is it there? What impact does it ultimately have on the audience, either the viewer or the reader? Let's see. This is just a little reminder. Again, ultimately, including this one, all of the projects for the class are thesis driven. Again, the best things to think about for creating a good thesis are to try to make your topic and your argument as narrow as possible. You know, to give an example, I do have an example here, actually starting on the very next slide, but I will be walking you through a little example of a Sam Altman tweet. Ultimately, you want your thesis to just narrow down on perhaps one specific thing he's doing, or ultimately just come to one specific conclusion, perhaps, about the way the rhetoric as a whole is functioning. Don't go too broad with it. Again, for always, the more narrow you can go, the better. You want your thesis to be debatable. Something, again, my thing that I go to for debatability is pretend you have a room of 50 people. Would there at least be a sizable minority, like 10 or 15 people who perhaps would not agree with your thesis? That's when you know you have a real strong, debatable thesis there for you. And of course, your thesis should also be significant. It should be pretty clear to your reader why your thesis and why this topic ultimately matters. So for rhetorical analyses, how do you come up with a good thesis? Well, often, let's see, well, the thesis should always tie back to some sort of question at issue. Often, the question at issue will focus on the overall effectiveness of the text. So perhaps a good question at issue to use to determine your thesis might be something like, what makes this a particularly effective or ineffective text for achieving its purpose? Again, I'll actually read through this with you in a second, but the Sam Altman tweet, perhaps a good thesis would be, what makes this an effective tweet to convey the message he's trying to convey? Or on the flip side, if I do not find this tweet to be very effective, what makes it so ineffective? Those are certainly good questions to ask as you're constructing a thesis and thinking about a rhetorical analysis. Other times, the questions might focus on the deeper meaning of the text. So not necessarily is this tweet effective or ineffective, but perhaps is there a deeper meaning to what he's trying to get across in his tweet? What do all of the rhetorical choices put together reveal about either a hidden or less obvious or below the surface meaning of what he is trying to convey? What do they suggest perhaps about the speaker's true purpose? So these are some ideas for you as you're thinking of possible questions at issue to form a thesis for rhetorical analysis. But let me see. So I will walk through my little example here with you as well, going through this tweet. I would say that just like for analysis, I would recommend not starting with your thesis. In general, I would kind of go through similar steps to what we talked about for the regular analysis. Start by casting a very wide net and just observing things. Take in everything that you notice about the speaker or the writer's rhetorical choices. Again, you're just noticing everything at this stage. Some of this stuff might factor into your final analysis. Some of it might not, but starting by casting a wide net and just seeing what you notice and seeing what you observe is usually the first thing I would recommend. Then, of course, once you cast the wide net, you can start to interpret some of the data that you found. Are the rhetorical choices he's making good or bad? What might they mean? That's when you can start to put some more value judgments on the things that you observe. And then finally, of course, in the end, you can make conclusions and figure out what patterns you notice and how they might all relate or tie back to whatever thesis you're kind of coming up with. But again, the thesis is probably not going to be the first thing you do. The first thing is probably going to be making as many observations as you can about the thing that you're analyzing, and then interpreting that. And that hopefully will be the thing that drives your thesis. All right, so let's take a look at this example. Perhaps this is a little bit longer for a tweet, but that's okay. I'm going to read through it, and I will then show you my example of how I might rhetorically analyze this tweet by Sam Altman. Let's see, this tweet, you can kind of see at the bottom there, is from the very end of September. This is when he was introducing Sora to the world. This, I guess, was his first tweet where he kind of goes over what Sora is and some of the potential risks and cool things about it. So let's take a look at what Sam has to say about Sora. He writes, "We are launching a new app called Sora. This is a combination of a new model called Sora 2 and a new product that makes it easy to create, share, and view videos. This feels to many of us like the ChatGPT for creativity moment, and it feels fun and new. There is something great about making it really easy and fast to go from idea to result, and the new social dynamics that emerge. Creativity could be about to go through a Cambrian explosion, and along with it, the quality of art and entertainment can drastically increase. Even in the very early days of playing with Sora, it's been striking to many of us how open the playing field suddenly feels. In particular, to put yourself and your friends into a video, the team worked very hard on character consistency. With the cameo feature, is something that we have really enjoyed during testing. It is, to many of us, a surprisingly compelling new way to connect. We also feel some trepidation. Social media has had some good effects on the world, but it's also had some bad ones. We're aware of how addictive a service like this could become, and we can imagine many ways it could be used for bullying. It is easy to imagine the degenerate case of AI video generation that ends up with all of us being sucked into an RL-optimized slot feed. The team has put great care and thought into trying to figure out how to make a delightful product that doesn't fall into that trap, and has come up with a number of promising ideas. We will experiment in the early days of the product with different approaches." Picking up in the next little column there, in addition to the mitigations we've already put in place, which include things like mitigations to prevent someone from misusing someone's likeness in deepfakes, safeguards for disturbing or illegal content, periodic checks on how Sora is impacting users' mood and well-being, and more, we are sure we will discover new things we need to do if Sora becomes very successful. To help guide us toward more of the good and less of the bad, here are some principles we have for this product. Optimize for long-term user satisfaction. The majority of users looking back on the past 6 months should feel that their life is better for using Sora, that it would have been possibly a typo there if it hadn't. If that's not the case, we will make significant changes, and if we can't fix it, we would discontinue offering the service. Encourage users to control their feed. You should be able to tell Sora what you want. Do you want to see videos that will make you more relaxed or more energized? Or only videos that fit a specific interest? Or only for a certain amount of time? Eventually, as our technology progresses, you should be able to tell Sora what you want in detail in natural language. However, parental controls for teens include the ability to opt out of a personalized feed and other things like turning off DMs. Prioritize creation. We want to make it easy and rewarding for everyone to participate in the creation process. We believe people are natural-born creators, and creating is important to our satisfaction. And then help users achieve their long-term goals. We want to understand a user's true goals and help them achieve them. If you want to be more connected to your friends, we will try to help you with that. If you want to get fit, we can show you fitness content that will motivate you. If you want to start a business, we'll help teach you the skills you need. And if you truly just want to doom scroll and be angry, then okay, we'll help you with that. Although we want users to spend time using the app if they think it's time well spent, we don't want to be paternalistic about what that means to them. All right, so those are Sam's words about their new product that they were launching. Let's see. There we go. Here are some quick things I observed. Again, just to when I was making these observations, I actually read this probably like 4 or 5 different times. Often the very first time you read something, you're just kind of getting the surface level meaning and perhaps the maybe more obvious rhetorical choices that he's making. So by all means, sometimes it takes at least 2 or 3 different either reads or listens or something like that to fully come up with a lot of observations. But some of the things I observed were that the word new appears 5 times in the first 2 paragraphs. He really wants, well, this is me interpreting, I guess, but that's okay. Again, you're going to move through all those steps more fluidly than 1 and then 2 and then 3. But he goes, new app called Sora, combination of a new model and a new product. That second paragraph especially, this feels to many of us like the ChatGPT for creativity moment, and it feels fun and new. Again, it just feels like he's really emphasizing that this is a new thing. So that was something that my brain kind of picked up on. Let's see. He also repeats feeling and talks about his feelings and the team's feelings quite a bit. This feels to many of us like ChatGPT for creativity, and it feels fun and new. It's striking how open the playing field feels, etc. He really is seeming to want to talk a lot about his feelings and the feelings of his team here. Something else I noticed is that a lot of it is very simple conversational language. But I also noticed that he's kind of vague in certain places. The one line in particular that really kind of stood out to me was when he said, towards the bottom left column there, social media has had some good effects on the world, but also some bad ones. A lot of times when you're doing analysis of any kind, you're kind of coming at it from your very specific place in the world and your set of prior experiences and your background knowledge and all that stuff. That sentence to me very much reminded me of perhaps like some student essays I've read, especially when I was working with 9th graders, right? There's some good things about social media, but also some bad things. Feels very like kind of simple, vague student essay topic sentence, perhaps. So that was a connection I made. It's just something that I noticed as I was reading. Let's see. This again, I guess, is a little more surface level, but that's okay. Seems like Altman acknowledges that there are some potential or even some likely harms with his product, such as bullying, addictiveness, and all of us getting sucked into an RL slot feed, but offers no specific solutions. he kind of points to, yeah, we thought about that, or yeah, we're mitigating that. But again, he's not being very specific. The whole tweet is kind of vague, like I said, so not giving specific solutions, I suppose, fits in with the rhetoric that he's using in general. But, of course, that's something that a critical reader could point out, that there's not a lot of specific solutions being offered. Something my brain noticed, of course, looks very much like a ChatGPT written tweet. I believe he's actually said in the past that he intends to write all of his essays in the future using ChatGPT, but of course, it's something that you can kind of pick up on pretty easily there. I noticed there's no pictures or videos from Sora. Again, this whole product is about creativity and making new videos, so it's interesting. Certainly, he's tweeted things with pictures and videos in the past, and this feels like one where there could have been a video, but he chose not to, so I noticed that. And then this is, of course, something that stands out when he talks about doom scrolling and being angry. That's very, I don't know, specific to my brain. That's something I picked up on. Then, of course, you interpret things, repeating. I'm going to move a little faster through this, I think. I'm sure most of you are kind of getting the picture. Saying, this is new product, new software, new system, makes it feel really proprietary, like he's doing something new here. But he's not really proving that, right? Again, there's no pictures, no videos. There's no proof, I guess, that this is really better than previous iterations or previous AI video technology. Let's see, repetition of words and concepts like fun, play, creativity kind of reminds me of like kids. That's something that comes up a little bit in my conclusion here, but very youthful connotations to that. I kind of picture perhaps like a small elementary school aged child like playing and making art projects when he's using words like that so much. Simple language choices he makes feel very young and youthful to me. Let's see, the idea of them helping users achieve their long-term goals, even when their list of goals includes doom scrolling and being angry, kind of feels like they're just trying to shift responsibility away from themselves, and not really take responsibility for creating a healthy or safe app or product for the world. Let's see. Similarly, that line about we don't want to be paternalistic about what long-term goals users might have, again, is very youthful, right? Certainly paternalistic is a form of the word paternal, or like a fatherly character or fatherly descriptive term. So by saying we don't want to be paternalistic, that also feels very young to me. And again, it just seems like another way of kind of deflecting responsibility away from themselves. And then, of course, the lack of specific solutions that they include in their tweet, along with continuing to acknowledge, yeah, we're going to have to keep working on this in the future, of course, leads me as a reader to assume that perhaps they don't have answers to these problems and questions quite yet. So here, I guess, is kind of how I attempted to put this all together. I am a little bit less happy with my example here than I was for my last video on the commercial analysis. That's okay. If I'm asking you guys to share your writing with various stages of completeness and various stages of how happy you are, then I feel like I should feel the same. Here is my attempt, I guess, at doing a rhetorical analysis of this tweet. Let's see, move my camera out of the way here so I can see everything I wrote. I wrote, Sam Altman, speaking on behalf of OpenAI in a recent tweet, uses youthful language choices while describing his new product, Sora. Altman's continued references to his product feeling fun and new, and the enjoyment his team experienced while testing out new features, causes the reader to view Altman more like a child playing with a new toy rather than a serious tech company CEO. By specifically mentioning how this product makes him and his team feel over 4 times in the short tweet, often in vaguely described ways, Altman makes a clear appeal to pathos. Altman draws upon the rhetoric of one who has just experienced something so great they cannot successfully find the words to describe it. You will just need to try Sora yourself to see what is so great and fun about this new product. Altman presents few practical benefits of this technology to society, so an appeal to his audience's emotions is likely the most effective approach he could take in marketing Sora. Altman later states that he would like for Sora to help users achieve their long-term goals. Paragraph 11, no matter what those goals might be. He playfully states that they will even help the user to doom scroll and be angry if that's what they really want. Though clearly intended with a bit of humor, Altman concludes this section by stating that they don't want to be paternalistic about how users interact with the app. By continuing to position himself as a childlike figure who does not want to be paternalistic towards his users, Altman shifts responsibility away from himself in the need to create a healthy and safe app experience. What is really so wrong with a paternal figure telling you to get off your phone if you've been doom scrolling for hours? As the CEO of one of the biggest AI companies in the world, Altman's rhetorical choices suggest that he does not take seriously his duty of care towards either his app users or society as a whole. So again, what I was attempting to do here, perhaps successfully, maybe not so successfully, was that as I was noticing and observing things, I just kept kind of coming back to this idea that the vagueness, the simple language, the lack of specifics just felt very young. And of course, the emphasis on this is so great, this is so new, this is so fun, again, felt very youthful, right? It kind of feels like Altman is not stepping into the role of tech CEO here, but he's kind of, I don't know, fangirling a little bit over his own product. All of that feels very youthful to me. And so the perhaps underlying thesis I was trying to get across was that by writing in that particular way, that makes him feel kind of young to his readers of this tweet. Perhaps he's trying to kind of shift or deflect responsibility away, or even just sort of position himself as somebody who does not necessarily need to take as much responsibility for all the potentially very bad things that a product like Sora could unleash upon the world. So that is sort of where I was going with this. If I had any critical feedback for myself, it might be that I'm not sure that thesis gets across super well. Perhaps part of the reason was trying my very best to get all of this to fit on one Google slide. But perhaps trying to organize my writing a little more clearly around that thesis would make this a little bit stronger. But hopefully this example at least gives you a general idea of how to do a rhetorical analysis and what it might kind of look like. Let's see, a few vocab terms, kind of like we did for the film analysis. I just kind of want to give you a word bank of potential things that might be helpful to you as you think about the things that you're noticing and whatever you choose to rhetorically analyze for this project. Especially if you've taken AP English last year, this idea of soapstone might be something that you have seen before. But soapstone is an acronym with the different parts, I guess, of a rhetorical message. So the S stands for speaker, who is speaking, and again, that could be either speaking in a written text-based source, or it could be an actual speaker in a more video-based medium. Either way, we call that person the speaker, and what details about the speaker are important to know. So in this case, speaker is Sam Altman, and perhaps it would be helpful for me to include a half sentence just mentioning that he's the CEO of OpenAI, one of the biggest AI companies in the world. That's our speaker. The occasion is the time, place, and context in which the text was written or spoken. So in this case, it was, I believe, right before the release of Sora to the world. That was the occasion in which he was writing. Audience, who was the text either written for or spoken for in the case of a more verbal text. And how do you know? Are there any secondary audiences? So perhaps Altman wrote this particularly for people who might want to try out Sora, but I'm quite sure he knows that there are many other people who are probably going to come across this tweet at some point who are not necessarily his intended audience. Those secondary groups you could think of as the secondary audience. Purpose, why would this particular speaker create this text for this audience and this occasion? What do they seem to be hoping to achieve? What's Altman trying to achieve with his tweet? That's the purpose. Subject, what's the topping and meaning of this text? And then the tone, how does the speaker feel about the subject and how do you know? Let's see. So again, depending on if you've done rhetorical analyses before or how they're taught, some teachers really kind of want to make sure that students include all of these different things in their papers. You might have noticed by now that I am not really a big fan, I guess, of using too many templates or formulas in writing. I actually think that it can make writing worse, and I think it can sort of stifle your own creativity. I'm a much bigger fan of just approaching it with a spirit of curiosity and seeing what you observe and seeing what stands out to you, rather than like trying to make sure all of these different things fit into your papers. So really just think of these as terms that are good to know that may potentially factor into your papers at some point. We've talked about the rhetorical appeals, but certainly in the case of persuasive texts, the speaker is usually attempting to use some or even most of these appeals. Just depends on if they're doing it effectively or not, or if they are perhaps prioritizing some over others. So in Altman's case, I think he's definitely trying to appeal to emotion more than anything. This feels fun, this feels new, rather than trying to perhaps create a true logical argument for why Sora 2 is a good or important product to unleash upon the world. But these are your rhetorical appeals. Here is a bit of a word bank, I guess, of different figurative language and devices you may notice in whatever text you choose to analyze. There's things like repetition, hyperbole, anecdotes. I wanted to pause briefly on these two because I think these are interesting ones, especially in the case of writing about AI. Personification, I'm quite sure you've heard that in English classes before, but that one is taking non-human things and kind of writing about them or describing them using human-like language. So perhaps, I don't know, the water danced out of the faucet could, of course, be personification. Anthropomorphism or anthropomorphization, I guess traditionally or historically has been kind of doing same thing with regards to animals, like writing about animals in a very human-like way. But certainly, I think myself over the last 6 months or so, I've heard the term anthropomorphic or anthropomorphization used quite a bit with relation to different AI products and services and features. Perhaps, even a sentence like, I asked ChatGPT what it thought of my essay. If I said something like that, that would be very much ascribing like human-like words to ChatGPT, right? What would ChatGPT thought of my essay? Like, it's not really thinking. So anthropomorphic and forms of that words are potentially really useful things to think about as you're thinking about how AI is described, because it very often is described using like human-like terms and descriptors and stuff like that. Anyway, it's a bit of a tangent, but so you have terms like personification, anthropomorphism, you have rhetorical questions, similes, metaphors, symbolism, irony, parallelism, analogy, connotative language. That's another helpful one. Connotation means association. So what do you associate with the language or the word choices that are being used? Example of a connotation would be like that sentence about there's some good things about social media, but there's also some bad. My connotation to that was perhaps like reading and grading 9th grade essays, right? That's my own association. Certainly we all have associations with things, so I always find connotations to be a fun one to analyze because there's no right or wrong answer, really. We all have our own different unique associations with different languages and word choices and all that. But that's connotations. You have diction, allusions, euphemisms, juxtaposition, imagery. Not a complete list by any means. You can go on and on and on with these, but these are some of the most common, perhaps, devices that you might find as you're rhetorically analyzing things. Let's see, and this I think is my last slide. So remember when you're writing your own rhetorical analyses to not only point out what you see, so don't just say, Altman says this. This is an example of pathos. Don't stop there. Analyze them. Why is that pathos there? What's it doing? What effect does it create? How is it building to Altman's overall message? So that I think is probably one of the most common things I see that potentially weakens rhetorical analyses. Remember not just to point out what you see in the text, but do something with it, analyze it in some way. Remember to try your best to determine or argue how all of these different choices that you notice ultimately tie back to whatever thesis statement you come up with. And then, of course, just good practice for all argumentative essays, but why does all of this ultimately matter? Why should I care about your argument? Especially in the case of a rhetorical analysis, it could potentially be pretty easy to, just kind of make more of a list of not pathos. Altman uses pathos and Altman uses simple language. It's very easy actually to not kind of hammer down for your reader why this matters. In my case, that last sentence is where I was really trying to do that piece of things here, where I wrote, as the CEO of one of the biggest AI companies in the world, Altman's rhetorical choices suggest he does not take seriously his duty of care towards either his app users or society as a whole. Again, that sentence is hopefully, if I did a good job at this, grounded in all of the language and rhetorical choices I pointed out before. But ultimately, it should tie back to some clear reason for your reader about why all this ultimately matters. Why should they care? All right. I feel like this video was a hair longer than I was hoping or anticipating. So apologies for that, but I will pause there. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you soon. Bye. Take care.